Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 23 of Diabetics for Diabetics Radio. Today's episode is titled Foods for the Liver. We're going to talk about how nutrition and supplementation can be used to cleanse, fortify, and rebalance the amazing organ that is the liver. Now, if we haven't met, my name's Bowie. I've had type 1 diabetes for over 20 years. I've spent the last 2 years of those 21 really diving into the research, trialing on myself, and sharing everything that I'm finding in terms of alternative medicine, holistic health, spiritual healing, everything you could think of outside of the endocrinologist's office, trying to learn more about the disease and better means of managing as well as healing. All right. I started recording this journey via TikTok. And that was about almost a year ago now. And that's where you can find some more of my short-term content. It's my handle there. Go ahead and follow. Subscribe here to stay up to date on everything probably brand new to you on the type 1 diabetes front. Now, why is liver health important? If you are at all familiar with this podcast, so much of the earlier episodes, I would say probably episode 6 through 15, has had some tie to liver health. And that is rooted in my identification of iron overload as a primary causative agent in the development of diabetes. Now, the liver-iron connection is undeniable. Liver is where iron is recycled. The liver is where iron is stored. The liver itself, as we'll see here on this slide, is so incredibly well connected with just about every other part of the body, right? So it secretes hormones, it stores vitamins and minerals, it's the major site of vitamin and mineral storage in the body. It's responsible for detoxing. That could be bacteria, that could be viruses, that could be heavy metals, you name it. And then it's responsible for packaging them and getting rid of them, okay? So when you look at all of those things, think of the systems that it's able to influence. The endocrine system, right? Hormones. As diabetics, being concerned with our pancreas and its secretion of insulin, we have to be wary of the endocrine system, right? And if the liver is such an important part of that endocrine system, it's able to influence all parts of the endocrine system. So from your brain and your pituitary all the way down to your reproductive organs, right? So it's tied to all of those. The digestive system, the ability to digest food, specifically fats. The liver is very important. The liver makes bile, so it's incredibly influential in the digestion of fats in our food. It's also a major store of glycogen, which is stored glucose. And what else does it do? I mean, it's a major vitamin and mineral store. So all of the excess fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K, as well as iron and copper, those are all mainly held in their storage forms in the liver. Okay. And now when you think about the detoxification process, the storage process, and the potential for any sort of imbalances, the liver is going to play a part in getting rid of those things, right? So now, what are the ways that it can get out? You're going to pee it out or you're going to poop it out, right? So now the liver plays into what's going into the small intestine, what's going through the kidneys. So we have to know what's going on with our liver in order to truly understand it and master our health. So as diabetics, what's actually wrong with our liver, and is there something wrong with our liver? I would argue, based on my iron overload diabetes connection, that being diabetic, having diabetes, implies a certain degree of liver dysfunction, right? The ties are undeniable, and I encourage you to look back at some of the previous episodes, probably with liver in the title, that talk about how that all plays out. With altered iron recycling, iron is being pushed and stored in neighboring organs like the pancreas. Iron is incredibly reactive. It leads to a lot of pro-oxidation and inflammatory responses that over a period of time lead to cell death. Now, just like we just mentioned in how influential the liver is in so many processes, in just about everyone today experiencing some sort of metabolic dysfunction, they are experiencing that dysfunction in a system directly influenced by the liver, right? All the stomach issues going on right now, right? So something's not being digested well. Hormonal profiles, Hashimoto's disease, PCOS. It could be any number of things. High cortisol in the adrenal glands, adrenal fatigue. Kidneys are or the liver is influencing the kidneys. The liver is influencing the gut. The liver is influencing the gonads. Okay. And then from a fibrosis and calcification standpoint, diabetics in the literature have a certain degree of scarring. And anybody experiencing any sort of metabolic disorder, which diabetics do, they have been found to have abnormal levels of fat in their visceral organs, like the liver and like the pancreas, right? So non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is the number one liver dysfunction disorder in the world right now, okay? So it's pretty undeniable that, can I point at everyone with diabetes and say, oh my God, your liver is wrecked, everything's wrong? No, that's not true. What I would say is that there has to be some sort of irregularity, some sort of dysfunction in some function of the liver in order for you to have gotten to a state where you could develop diabetes. Now, there are outside factors of that. You could be, environmental. It could be, other, your food, your social relationship, your economic, socio status, what have you. There's lots of other things outside that could be making things worse, but I'd be willing to bet my bottom dollar the liver's got something to do with it. So how serious is it? I'm just going to refer to myself when I talk about this because that's just how this is all based on my personal experience. Everything here is meant to be educational. Please take what I say, vet it against your own experiences, do your own due diligence in following up on things that I'm talking about here. But I've gone through 6 liver flushes, and in the next slide, we're going to talk about what a liver flush is, but it is a very direct means of cleansing the liver of calcified gallstones. Now, calcified gallstones are indicative of abnormal fat deposits, abnormal calcification, and the blockage of proper lymph circulation, the blockage of proper hormonal circulation. It's indicative of a lot of different things. And over the past 6 months in which I have done these liver flushes, I have passed thousands, and that is not hyperbole, thousands of calcified gallstones, anywhere from probably the size of like a sesame seed all the way up to the size of a quarter. I am not kidding. For the purpose of this podcast, I'm not going to talk about the specifics of the flush itself. I'll talk about the book in the next slide, but the liver flush opened my eyes to the true state of my liver. And before that, I had never experienced anything that I hadn't correlated to any sort of altered liver state. So once I went through those liver flushes, I experienced huge health breakthroughs in terms of how I was feeling, the quality of my sleep, the quality of my rest, the quality of my skin, my ability to digest. You'll see here, my skin complexion changed. So I used to be a burner, like a burn and freckle kind of kid. I went from pale to burned pretty quickly. My skin peeled like crazy. After 2 of those flushes, instantly bronze. Instantly bronze. Olive, like more of an olive based tone. I'm not going to act like I look like I'm from the equator, but um, significant changes in the complexion of my skin. I didn't have super oily skin or a lot of acne, but things are clear. I feel really good, and that has to do with the liver's ability to store and circulate fat soluble vitamins. So with all of those calcified gallstones in there, it's impacting your liver's ability to function at its highest capacity. So I think what I would argue is that we, the population, have just come to accept things as the way they are without truly understanding the capacity of each of our organ systems. My energy level improved. I mean, that has to do with mineral retention, toxin offloading, improved digestion. Those are all fostering getting more out of my food and a better ability to use what I'm getting from food and use it in the body. Okay, so pretty incredible stuff. And here's the book that I used. It's by a healthcare practitioner. He's not a doctor. He was someone who was very sickly himself, Andreas Moritz, and dove into the holistic and alternative side of health to make this kind of protocol up. And like I said, I'm not going to go into the specifics of it. I may at a later date, but this is the book. I'll have this linked in the description for those that are interested. But calcified gallstones, absolutely incredible. So now you may be asking, okay, if liver health is so important, how am I supposed to help that? Like, what are some of the direct ways that I can? So we're going to talk about nutrition. We're going to talk about supplementation and lifestyle choices. The cleanses and the detoxes are all byproducts of the above 3. Okay. And before I go on, so you'll see adding and removing food types. So I am not at all condoning just take these 15 supplements and your life is instantly going to get better. It's about restoring balance. And to truly restore balance, you have to understand what you have too much of. You have to understand what you have too little of, and things that compound those imbalances. So it's not just, take all of this good stuff. It's, let's do some self-reflection, see what the bad stuff is so that we can remove it. That is going to increase the ability of the good stuff to do good things exponentially. Okay. And I'm going to use this term quite a bit from here on out, talking about iron chelation, right? So the liver is super iron heavy. It stores it, it recycles it, it boxes it up, packages it up, and sends it to where it needs to go in the body. Now, free iron is the dangerous iron, which I have labeled as probably agent 0 in the development of diabetes. So unbound iron is pro-oxidant. It is extremely reactive. It causes inflammation. Iron chelators, and that's why I got the handcuffs there. Iron chelators are natural compounds. There are synthetic chelators, but we're going to talk about natural binders to iron that make it easier to get rid of. It neutralizes iron and prevents it from doing its oxidation stuff, and makes it easier to excrete, either via our urine or via our feces. Okay, so that's what iron chelation is. So nutrition, out with the bad, right? What here in this list are you finding in your diet consistently? So enriched grains, right? I'm talking specifically about commercial flours, corn, wheat, I mean, any kind of flour. If it says enriched in it, it's going to tell you what's in it. One of the enriched items is going to be reduced iron. Okay, that is a problem, right? We've just eaten all of this reduced iron in our flours for generations, and it has epigenetically accumulated over time to a point where we are just so out of balance. So cereals, baked goods, pastas, breads, anything processed or boxed, it's just bad news. You got to get rid of it. All right. So I use rice. I eat potatoes. I soak my rice. I clean my rice. I soak my potatoes if I'm not baking them. And there is unenriched flour as well. So you are able to get flours that do not have added iron to it. Now, iron is naturally occurring in wheat. Iron in and of itself is not this enemy to be written off as I'm never going to eat it again. It is extremely useful in the body, but it needs to be taken in a state of balance with all of the natural checks and balances in place. Unbleached, unfortified wheat has those pieces. Okay, so King Arthur's flour is usually, I mean, you can just check the label, as well as Bob's Red Mill is typically the two most common commercial brands that do not fortify their grains. Next up, polyunsaturated fats, or PUFAs. So polyunsaturated fatty acids. These are your vegetable oils, Crisco, corn oil, soybean oil, safflower oil, etc. They are everywhere in the grocery store. If it comes in a cardboard box, chances are it's got one of these oils in them. Now, my issue with them is the fact that in their production, they are heated at extremely high levels. They are polyunsaturated fats, which when heated at extremely high temperatures are much more likely to oxidize and release free radicals, right? So this is, like I mentioned before, is the liver, the only thing that's wrong? No. But if you are eating imbalanced food that throws off the liver's function, and you're eating these pro-inflammatory foods that are making things worse, you got to get rid of those too. So I avoid all of these in any ingredient list that I'm looking up. We'll talk about the good in the next slide. Alcohol actually promotes the uptake of iron. It's just general. It's a nervous system depressant. Generally, something should be avoided. I think society in itself is kind of waking up to this a bit more than before. But wine, I should point out, is alcohol. People who like alcohol tend to say, oh well, I don't drink alcohol. I just drink wine. They are both alcohol, and they both have the similar effect in terms of your health. So lots of better ways to get your polyphenols. Added sugars and artificial sweeteners. So the degree of sugar that we are eating is the issue, not sugar, not glucose in and of itself. But if you are eating something that has added sugar to it, any sort of artificial sweeteners, sucralose, sweet and low, Splenda, what have you, I avoid it. Preservatives, dyes, artificial emulsifiers and stabilizers. Soy lecithin is in everything these days too. And then factory farmed meats and dairy, for the exact reason that what are those cows, pigs, and chickens being fed before they're processed? Everything above this on the list, right? They feed them vegetable, corn oil, GMO crops, just to get them nice and fat for slaughter. And then they are made up of what they eat. You eat them, you inherit all of the bad stuff, right? So got to avoid those factory farmed meats and dairy as well. So in with the good. So what does that leave us, right? Whole fruits and vegetables, okay? Organic when possible. Wash everything as much as possible after you buy it and bring it home from the store. Pretty straightforward, right? You know, people will look at Out with the Bad and wonder, well, what the hell am I supposed to eat? And then they'll see whole fruits and vegetables, and it doesn't take up a lot of space on the screen, but there are infinite combinations and types of vegetables, types of fruits that offer a wide variety of nutrient profiles. Being an advocate for your health is having the ability to prepare and cook your food. Okay, so if you're not confident in the kitchen, not comfortable in the kitchen, it's important that you become it, at least to the degree that you can make food that tastes good to you and doesn't contain any of the absolute nonsense that we talked before. Okay, so whole fruits and vegetables, we'll talk a little bit more about the specifics of those in just a little bit, but grass-fed meats, pasture-raised dairy, for this, you know, the same reason that factory farmed animals eating bad food makes their meat bad for you. If you have these cows, pigs, chickens, deer, what have you, eating natural foods, they're going to be able to pass on more desirable natural mineral profiles, fat content, what have you. So if what the animal eats is as close to what it's naturally meant to, you inherit more of its natural advantages. Okay. That includes organ meats, right? So eating the liver of another animal, grass-fed as well, you are getting all of the the vitamins and minerals stored in the liver. That goes for the kidneys, that goes for the heart. So I partake in both of those, or all of those organs, somewhat regularly, just to maintain intake of the good stuff from them. Moderation and portion control, and this is just as much for me as it is for any of you listening. It's important to monitor how much you eat, right? Diabetes and our loss, not just of insulin, but of amylin as well. Amylin is responsible for pacing our digestion, helping us make us feel full. And as diabetics, we don't have beta cells, we don't have amylin, right? So as we eat, it's very, very easy to overeat. The food is just moving through us without any sort of pacing from our stomach to our small intestine. So have to be mindful of portion control. Filtering your water and then reconstituting with trace metals, right? So all of those heavy metals in tap water, bad news, fluoride, all of that. Filter your drinking water and your bathing water. I know it sounds like a big deal, but once you get the filters in place and you start adding trace minerals, the difference is undeniable, from your skin and hair health all the way to your energy and the water that you drink. So I mentioned before, we touch on healthy fats. These are the fats that I prioritize: avocados, coconut oil, grass-fed butter. If they have raw butter, even better. And then nut butters, and then of course the fats from animal fats as well. That could include, what's it called? What's the fat from the kidneys? It'll come to me. But animal fats as well. Ghee is another one. Man, I can't think of that one. Suet. Suet is good as well from grass-fed animals. So for those that are supplementing as well, now again, I am a proponent of supplementing. My take on supplementation is that we as a society have become so incredibly imbalanced that to solely rely on the natural balance provided by our food is a slower way of addressing the imbalances. To supplement is a wonderful way to double down on what we are low on, to bring us back to a state of balance, where then we can continue to eat food solely. I mean, my goal is to be at a point where I don't have to supplement. I can just rely on my food. But in that state of imbalance, I use supplements to help raise what I'm low on and decrease what I'm high in to find that middle ground, and then go from food. These are ones that I do not like. Fish oil, flaxseed oil, for the reason that they are polyunsaturated fatty acids. In their preparation, they are heated, they are oxygenated. That means that they have been turned into free radicals. Something you're not going to read about because the industry doesn't want you to think about it, right? I don't take vitamin D3. I do not supplement vitamin D3. The NIH website on vitamin D3 states very clearly that the research on vitamin D is inconclusive in terms of its abilities to mitigate your risk for diseases. When you look at the science of D3, the politics and the economics of the promotion of vitamin D3, it is shady. And I've covered this in a previous podcast, I believe. Talking about iron overload, I'm definitely not supplementing iron. Multivitamins, I don't take multivitamins for the fact that they completely ignore balance, right? A multivitamin is just something with a lot of vitamins in it. The makers of those vitamins are just putting a lot of stuff in one thing. When you take that thing, you are getting, whatever ratio of good to bad. It's dependent on everybody. They're just like, oh yeah, you're going to get a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. What if you really don't need this one thing and you really need this one thing? And taking any of this one thing is going to negate any of that other thing that you're getting, right? So the fact that multivitamins just ignore balance means that I would much rather isolate things that I know I need. And the same goes for calcium. So many people are calcified. I mentioned before the fibrosis and calcification, specifically in the liver. The same way that foods have been over-fortified with iron, foods have also been over-fortified with calcium with no regard for natural balance, right? And things that can help calcium be absorbed at the right rate. So that brings in, what are the good supplements, right? So these are the targeted supplements that I've been focusing on to help rebuild my iron recycling system and prevent further oxidation and further inflammation. So copper, vitamin A, or retinol, a natural source preferably. A lot of things are fortified with retinol palmitate, which isn't very well absorbed. The natural source of retinol is best. I love cod liver oil for that exact reason. Cod liver oil, some cheeses are high in retinol. Butter is high in retinol. Retinol helps give things that yellow color. So like egg yolks. Egg yolks is another one. Egg yolks, grass-fed, raw, butter, good sources of retinol. Magnesium, for obvious reasons, we talked about this in the podcast before, I believe, just so incredibly important for nervous system function, for blood sugar regulation, you name it. Vitamin E, all of the fat-soluble vitamins, use A, E, and K there. So important as an antioxidant, specifically for the liver, because the liver is the main storage site for those fat-soluble vitamins. Vitamin E helps guard against the inflammation brought on by those polyunsaturated fatty acids. Trace mineral sources, right? So we talk a lot about heavy metal contamination. Those heavy metals are something that chase away those trace minerals. And with how processed our food is, a lot of those important trace minerals are being removed. Things like selenium, manganese, chromium, you see below. I rely on Shilajit, sea moss, and independent trace mineral supplements to get those. Shilajit and sea moss, I'll have links for those in the description. Berberine. Berberine is another great one that I use. It is an alkaloid. It's a plant compound that has been shown to be extremely beneficial for the liver, for blood sugar regulation, and managing inflammation. Okay. Vitamin K is something that helps mitigate calcification. Vitamin K is vital for the proper formation of tissues, the prevention of calcification, and proper function of the liver. Okay. And just as a point on how important it is, I mean, this isn't related to diabetes. It is loosely, but non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, or NAFLD, has become the most prominent liver disorder out there. And this one particular paper is just one of several that talks about how important those fat-soluble vitamins are in mitigating your risk for and the negative impacts of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, right? So this is bigger than just diabetes. This is metabolic dysfunction in its whole. So quick little advertising break here. So I have a Thorne store specifically for everything that I've talked about here. Okay, so from vitamin E, berberine, you see chromium there. They've got copper, they've got vitamin K, they've got glutathione, quercetin, so many great things. I'll have this linked in my description. You're able to go in and you'll get each of these things. You see them at full price listed there. You get them for 20% off by buying through my store. I also have links for other companies that I know and trust. Mitolife is one. Ancient Bliss is the other. I use them all myself. A huge fan of their lineups and what they're able to offer. And I've got discount codes for those as well, linked in the description. So in terms of the food specifics, and the list goes on because honestly, fruits and vegetables have such a plethora of incredibly beneficial ingredients and compounds in them. These are just some of the few that are really up there on my list. So black pepper. Black pepper is rich in alkaloids. It's a known antioxidant and iron chelator. It's taken a lot in conjunction with turmeric, which is rich in another alkaloid called curcumin. But turmeric and black pepper are very important for maximizing the absorption of turmeric. Iron chelators, antioxidants, it's all good for you. Cruciferous greens, kale, spinach, chard, broccoli. Oxalates, which I know get a lot of popular talk in the negative space because of influencers like Dr. Berg and Paul Saladino for being bad for your health. They are iron chelators, right? So each of the cruciferous greens are rich in iron, but they also have all of the tools with them that help manage the iron absorption, right? And, there's a lot more to those cruciferous greens than just the oxalates and iron, right? It's got vitamin K, magnesium, potassium. Those are just two aspects of an incredibly mineral-dense food source. So bell peppers, beets, quercetin, you've got those oxalates in those. They promote blood flow, potassium, manganese dense. Just common grocery store finds are super, super rich in plant compounds, right? And they're very, 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 very beneficial. Tree nuts and seeds, almonds, cashews, pumpkin seeds. Pumpkin seeds have been I love pumpkin seeds. I put them in just about everything that I eat. Super rich in magnesium, rich in fiber, rich in those fat-soluble vitamins. I know almonds are probably one of the best natural sources of vitamin E. Eggs as well. So the yolks, just like with those cruciferous greens, do not get lost in the little amount, the amounts of iron in egg yolks, right? You see iron and you get scared. But also, the egg also has all of the tools to prevent the overabsorption of iron, something called phosphatin, which is an iron chelator, right? Egg yolks are super rich in vitamin A, among other things, but really, really good for your liver. Tannin-rich food, grapes, dried fruits, cranberries. You get those polyphenols, those dark berries, cacao. I just heard and started reading a little bit more on the the powers of cacao or really, really dark chocolate on the proliferation of stem cells. So I've been playing around with that as well. And then caffeine. So caffeine is an iron chelator. You can find it in coffee, green and black teas. I'm more of a tea drinker than I am a coffee guy, but very good for your liver. Green tea, I know, is kind of classic in the traditional Chinese medicine realm for its beneficial properties for the liver. Plenty of herbs, right? And you'll see this in a lot of liver cleanse types of supplements, right? Thorn has a liver cleanse supplement. Ancient Bliss has a liver love supplement. They all contain some combination of one of these guys, right? So milk thistle, burdock root, chicory root, dandelion, cloves, garlic. I live in the northeastern United States, and we've got these everywhere outside. They are abundant in nature and very, very good for your health. So lifestyle choices, regular exercise. So the liver, apart from storing, detoxing, storing, as part of that detoxification and storing minerals, it's a significant holder of lymph. And lymph is so important for our immune health and regulating inflammation. So by exercising, the lymphatic system does not have a pump of its own like the circulatory system has the heart. Our lymphatic drainage, our lymphatic circulation is dependent on physical movement. You gotta be moving. You gotta be moving to circulate that lymph. Walking for 15 to 30 minutes, riding your bike, hiking, what have you, it burns fat, which can be stored in the liver. And non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is the what's the word I'm trying to think of? Infiltration of liver cells by fat that disrupt their function, right? By building lean muscle and losing body fat, you're able to maintain a higher metabolism, and you prevent the overstorage of vitamins and minerals or glycogen and stagnation of that lymph. Same goes for outdoor activity, right? Chances are if you're going to exercise, you should do it at some point outside. You get sun exposure. Sun exposure is going to promote your ability to create and absorb vitamin D. So you need a litany of supporting casts to get the most out of your vitamin D. Vitamin A is one of those. Vitamin E is one of those. So you need to improve your diet as well as getting sun exposure. Grounding. So touching bare skin to earth, the ability to neutralize a lot of the harmful frequencies being thrown around these days by our electronic lives. Really, really important part of regulating our nervous system, right? And then proper vitamins for the reasons I mentioned above with the vitamin D. Getting outside is a way to calm your nervous system. Calming your nervous system is a way to regulate your electrolyte retention. It's all connected. Like I said, it's all about balance, right? So any one of you could look at some of the things that I've said today, oxalates in, leafy greens. And there's a lot of data on how harmful oxalates can be in certain circumstances. But you have to understand it in the context of what it's being presented with, right? Too much of anything is not good, right? If you're like just eating oxalate-rich food without accounting for some of the pre-existing imbalances that you have, maybe oxalates aren't great for you and they are causing issues. But once you understand where you are coming from and the things that you are, things that you need, you will be able to see that the pros and cons of each of the vitamins or each of the foods and the context in which they need to be eaten, whether it be combinations of foods, separation of food throughout the day. each of the foods that we eat, nature is providing tools for both ends of the spectrum, right? There are situations where oxalates are important. There are situations where iron is important. Oxalates and iron work against one another to prevent the overabsorption of one another, right? So we all know that Mother Nature is rife with checks and balances. It exists on the micro scale within the food itself. For most people starting out on their health journey, I would go so far as to say that, most everything I've talked about today will lead you in a better direction and give you a much better sense of what you need and what you need to get rid of. Okay. So I wrote an entire book on that iron diabetes connection. It's called An Ironclad Cause. I'll have that linked in the description as well. I am just so eternally grateful that you are here, interested in the topic. Follow me on TikTok, subscribe to this channel. Diabetics for Diabetics Radio is going to continue through this channel. I've got tons of shorter form content as well on supplements, on talking more about that iron diabetes connection. I am just so pleased that you're here. I can't say enough about that. I've got nutrition supplement guides available, linked in the description as well. And with that, that's episode 23 of Diabetics for Diabetics Radio, Foods for the Liver. I am your host, Bowie Madison. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.